Here we are live for another Letter Winners podcast, week 15. 13, excuse me. Wow. That's, as you can tell, my attire. I'm in Kauai right now, Hawaii, so I am traveling. It is 5:30 a.m. Hawaiian Standard Time, so, forgive me for my week 15. I don't know what I'm thinking. It's week 13, last week of the regular season. Here we are, Michael. It's been a wild ride. Been going pretty well so far. We're 73-40 for our props and our sides on the year. So we can't really complain about that too much. But here we are. Let's get rolling so that my Michigan friend here can start getting mentally and physically prepared for the alcohol intake he's likely to ingest.
That's happening
for this
right
Ohio State Michigan game. Right. All right. Well, sounds good. Let's break in the late injury news. Keontae Ingram, USC. A game time decision. He didn't suit up for the midweek practices. Still holding out hope that he will be able to play against BYU, where USC are 7-point underdogs at home at the Coliseum. It'll be interesting to see how that goes there. Staying with USC, Kedon Slovis, USC. Lower leg muscle injury. Okay, he didn't start last week. They handed it over to Jackson Dart. All types of news saying he's looking to either transfer or possibly even enter the NFL draft, which would be an interesting decision, frankly. I think he's probably better off transfer. But hey, I'm not advising Mr. Slovis. So with Dart likely to start, I didn't do that on purpose. That rhyming, it's just how it is. We will see what we think about that. I cover it later in the show. Emory Jones, Florida. Early week reports saying that Anthony Richardson was going to start because Emory Jones sustained an ankle injury in Monday's practice. However, he has returned to practice and now is allegedly going to play. I wish we had some props out there on whether or not we could bet on that, but no books are giving us any Emory Jones action, unfortunately. And last piece of news bite here, Sean Clifford, Penn State, as we saw last week, did not last too long against Rutgers, went 2 for 8 before getting pulled unceremoniously due to an illness. He tried to gut it out, wasn't able to. He was back to a full practice on Tuesday and is expected to start. Michael, your thoughts on those news bites?
That Florida quarterback situation, I think, is front and center for me this morning because, I'm hoping Anthony Richardson gets the start and gets the full workload because he's cheap on both DFS sites this week. And he'd be an insta play this in this matchup that he has this week. But just reading, it sounds like neither quarterback is 100% healthy. So you're kind of running the risk of even trotting out Richardson this week because, one, if he's not fully healthy, and then two, do we see Emory Jones at all today as well with a split snaps? I don't know what the exact game plan is. It sounds like Anthony Richardson would start. It's one of those you just kind of risk it and see what happens because, he's only $6K on DraftKings, so you're not spending too much capital to have him in your lineup. So I'll try and look for the tea leaves this morning to see what we can uncover with the Florida quarterback situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, let's keep in mind with Florida, Dan Mullen just dismissed. So we don't know, we don't really have a track record with the coaching staff to say, oh, Mullen's favoring this guy or that guy. Who knows? Yeah,
I kind of with the USC situation, you wonder if if I'm the Florida administration, aren't you pushing to your interim head coach, hey, start Richardson. If he balls out, then that entices, whichever new head coach they have their sights set on. If they have a guy in mind for head coach, you'd want to prop up Richardson to be like, hey, look what you're getting if you come to coach the Florida Gators. So I think it's going to be Richardson. Hopefully it's the entire way because I have him in a bunch of my lineups.
Okay, well, you're putting your money where your mouth is on that. And it's almost a little bit similar to what Washington did yesterday with Sam Heward, where they said, hey, we got a 5-star freshman here. He's barely seen the field. I think we know what Dylan Morris is. I think we've got a handle on what he can and
He would
can't
have played
do.
better than Sam Heward last night.
I know. 4 interceptions plus another pick on a 2-point conversion. Yeah, it 5 turnovers, if you want to count that. It didn't look great. But, the gunslinging lefty, at least we have tape on him. I wish, for our purposes, Dylan Morris could have gotten at least 1 snap. Just 1 is all we were looking for. Maybe a helmet flies off. No. Oh, well, we had that.
We tried that a few times this year, and it just hasn't happened.
Gosh, one of these days, those lines, they're in our favor. But Kedon Slovis, we did get Kedon Slovis when he was splitting time with Dart, and his over-under was like in the 280 range or something, and that was a wonderful situation. So that did hit. So, it's worked out in our favor as well. All right. Clemson. Joseph Ngata is out again. Obviously, we saw Justin Ross had surgery. He will be out. EJ Williams is a game-time decision. My gosh, the attrition in this Clemson wide receiver room it's been as bad as you can expect. And to go with the QB play, Uiagalelei has been absolutely terrible as well. So, all of them, all of these starting wide receivers for Clemson as opening day are out. Looks like the Bo Collins show is going to be riding into town once again. And wish we had another line like we did last week on them. Nice little cupcake, 38.5. That's what we like. But, we pounded that, and that is not to come to fruition this week. Gerry Bohanon. I keep saying Jerry, Gary. It's my bad, Mr. Bohanon. Baylor. Day-to-day ahead of their tilt against Texas Tech with a hamstring injury. It's not what I want to hear from a guy who can run a little bit. Obviously, I think he probably guts it out, and we see him. But how long he will be for this game is anybody's guess, considering they should probably handle Texas Tech pretty well, as they got beat up on, pretty heavily by Oklahoma State last week. But we'll see how that works out. And then finally, obviously, we have to talk about Michigan, of course, with Mr. Bainbridge. Blake Corum, superstar running back for the Wolverines, is questionable. I will leave it to Michael to further elaborate on that since he is dialed into that room. Michael, your thoughts on those 3 news bites?
Yeah, I'll cover the Gerry Bohanon news and my sides pick in a little bit. Corum's going to play. I don't think there's any doubt. I don't think there's actually official word out there right now, but he was suited up last week against Maryland, ended up not seeing the field, obviously, because Maryland is absolute trash. Wasn't needed. Michigan put a lot of stuff on tape last week for Ohio State to think about utilizing Donovan Edwards, 5-star freshman, as a receiver last week. I think he had like 10 receptions on 12, 13 targets. And he already looks good as a running back. And if you can add that weapon, he looks like a dynamic player for the future. But I would expect Corum to play. He's only 4,400 on DraftKings, so I think that's a pretty good value for a running back. That is we've seen he's going to get at least 15 touches, splitting with Hassan Haskins in the backfield. I think at price, Hassan Haskins probably not worth it in DFS, just because with Corum healthy, he's going to be splitting carries. He's not as dynamic, obviously, as Corum. But yeah, I think it's going to be tough for Michigan to run the ball, I think, a little bit this week, just because Ohio State is so dominant on the defensive front with their defensive line. I think they're like top 5 in defensive rushing success this year. So, maybe they utilize Corum kind of how they utilized Donovan Edwards last week as a receiver, because that's what he's really good at. So, we'll see. But I firmly believe Blake Corum will be in the lineup today.
Yeah, very interesting, obviously. And there's plenty of props to be had in that game. Very, pretty reasonable. As far as Haskins goes, he started out at 66.5 on DraftKings. Actually bumped up. He went up overnight, and I think he's up in the mid-70s. I think he's gone up 10 yards, which is interesting. Obviously, people seeing the game flow going that direction. If you like that under on Haskins, you've gotten a little extra value. Might be something to consider throwing into some parlays or going clean on it. something to think about.
It's a tough matchup to run against Ohio State, but you'd think that's going to be the game plan, is to keep Stroud, keep those wide receivers off the field. So, I mean, while I wouldn't play Hassan Haskins in DFS, I mean, as a prop at 66, you kind of have to take it because he's going to be fed the football. So,
well, he was at 66. I'm saying he went up overnight. He's at, I think, 76.5 now, which I think is, I can't. I'm not taking the over on that with Corum playing. I'm just not doing it with a halftime, part-time lover, as they say. I can't go with it. On the sides. For me, my first side, Southern Miss minus 13.5. I know.
Love this play. I love this play.
I mean, Southern Miss has started out really slow. I mean, real slow. Had multiple QB injuries that they had to deal with. They've really been trying to find something that works at quarterback, and they did last week. And, I mean, let's face it, they sent Skip Holtz packing. He is now officially announced that he is coaching his last game this week for Louisiana Tech. Pretty long-storied career that he had there. Did a great job. But that team, after Southern Miss came out and pretty much controlled the line of scrimmage and looked a lot better. This is a good defense anyways by CUSA standards. They do a good job turning the ball over and causing havoc, but they just haven't been able to get that offense together. And now they have. Jason Brownlee has been really good for the past 5 weeks. He was an excellent receiver coming into the season. He just was kind of plagued by inconsistent QB play. And obviously you got Frank Gore Jr. there running the ball. So against a Florida International team that I think, honestly, Mike, when it comes to the worst teams in the FBS, I think FIU is legitimately in the conversation for the dirt worst. What do you think?
Yeah, they were. They weren't at the start of the year, but I was going to say,
I'm not talking about the start of the year.
Yeah. This play doesn't even have anything to do with Southern Miss, in my opinion. Yes, they looked good with that offense last week, but FIU, as evidenced in the last 2 weeks, has absolutely quit on the season. Is Butch Davis even coaching anymore? I know he's gone out after this year, but I don't even know if he's actually coaching the team right now. They're done this year, so it has nothing to do with Southern Miss. I think they'll trash FIU today. So I love this
Absolutely. Play. Two teams going in different directions is kind of what it is. Southern Miss going a little better. FIU giving up. And motivation's a big factor, obviously, this last week of the season. We've seen it with a few different teams. Look at TCU. They just didn't even care against Iowa State last week. Speaking of motivation, we talked a little bit about USC. BYU -7. I was a little surprised to see it at -7 after UCLA just did whatever they wanted. It's so much about USC's offense for me, which I think is still, pretty good. But, no Keontae Ingram. Okay, trot out fifth-year senior Vave Malapei, which doesn't really do much for me. And then, obviously, Dart, who I like, and I think will be throwing plenty, like he did against UCLA through 325 yards. But dude, that USC defense is listless. They got dominated by UCLA last week. 66 points. Highest point total that's ever been scored against USC. Ever last week. I don't think they're going to be able to stop Tyler Algier and a pretty good BYU offense. I'm laying the 7 points, even on the road in the Coliseum, because I just think USC is ready to turn the page and figure out who their next head coach is going to be at this point. It's just I can't back that defense.
Does BYU have anything to play for right now? We were talking about motivation this last week. I think they've got bowl secured and everything, right? They don't have anything to.
They do. Well, they play in the independent, so it's not like they have a conference championship to worry about, but neither does USC. I'm just pretty much going with it. Just after watching that whole USC-UCLA game, which I covered for NBC Sports, my God, that defense was so bad. I just can't do it. I just can't back it. So fine, I'll lay the 7. I know it's a road favorite, but man, I just can't do it. I can't do it with USC. Michael, your side / over/under.
Yeah, I like Texas Tech and Baylor under 52. We touched on the Gerry Bohanon news earlier. I read as early as yesterday that Bohanon is unlikely to play today. So they'll be playing Blake Shippen, their backup quarterback. He did well last week. I think he completed like 16 of 21 passes, $137, 44 rushing yards on the ground, but it's still a backup quarterback. So then we're thinking, okay, Baylor, backup quarterback facing Texas Tech, going to run the ball, right? That's your bread and butter on offense with Abram Smith, Treston Ebner. Texas Tech has been really good at defending the run of late, under 4 yards a carry in the last 4 weeks. And they faced some really good rushing teams in that span. So I think this game where you got a backup quarterback on one side, inexperienced starter on the Texas Tech side with Donovan Smith, only 2 starts in his career. So I think there's a good chance that this game goes under the 52 total.
Can't argue with that logic, frankly. And I just checked this morning, FanDuel put out some of their late props where Abram Smith is just under 100 yards. I think he's 98.5, as well as Treston Ebner, I believe, is 44.5 for their rushing totals. So nothing on the QBs, obviously, in this game on the props front. But if they are going to pound the ball, at least Ebner, you're getting a little bit of value there. And Abram Smith, though Texas Tech defends well, I mean, he's been his converted linebacker. He's been as good as you can ask for. Yep. On to the DFS plays. My core 2 plays for the main slate. I am going with, and Michael, I know, you're probably sick of hearing this. Sean Clifford, Penn State, at only $6,100. I mean, what a bargain, frankly, in this QB slate. They're playing Michigan State, okay? 340 yards per game average through the air. We saw C.J. Stroud, literally, Heisman moment after Heisman moment. Our producer, Andy, has him at 10-1. He is heavy on Ohio State, our boy. So, obviously, we want to see – not Michael doesn't want to see that. But, hey, Michigan State's secondary is a caricature. The next closest team – I want to say is allowing like 320, like they're 20 yards worse, the next worst pass defense. This is Penn State. This is Mike Yuricich's offense. Sure, Sean Clifford was sick last week, but he was sick. He wasn't injured. He was sick. He was practicing on Tuesday. He's practiced all week. I'm sure he's fine by now. I mean, I don't see any reason why you can't at $6,100. I think it's an overreaction putting him at that price. And again, our boy, Pat Garwo, BC, also $6,100. The man has received 24 carries, and 30 carries over the past 3 weeks. He has benefited from Phil Jurkovec coming back because Jurkovec actually, he runs a lot too. He's done a great job on the ground, in fact, and he's a guy who's known for his arm. But since coming back, that rushing attack has really kind of gotten a lot more effective. They at least have the ability to threaten teams with Dennis Grosel not there with his poor accuracy. We know that Jurkovec can throw downfield. He's got Zay Flowers, so you have to respect the deep ball there. I love the fact Garwo is going to get double-digit carries. They're playing a Wake Forest team that defensively is not going to scare anybody and has shown that they're going to give up plenty of yards. I think at $6,100, he's the 16th priced running back in this slate. He's a great value play. Michael, your core 2 plays for the main slate.
Yeah, just to touch on Garwo, too. He might get fed the ball even more because it came out before the show that Jurkovec is one of the 15 or 30, 30, I don't know, players that are dealing with the flu for Boston College today. Flu is apparently going around the country right now because MSU, Michigan State, dealing with
Michigan
it as well.
State.
So, if Jurkovec's not 100% feeling up to the task, maybe they just feed Garwo today. So I do like that pick. My 2 plays, Chase Brown, Illinois at 5,800. I mean, it's the Northwestern run defense, right? They're the worst in the Big Ten. They're one of the worst in the country too. Northwestern's allowing 24 fantasy points per game to RB1s this season. So we kind of touched on it. Illinois has nothing to play for this week. So I think potentially we could see Josh McCray, the backup talented freshman, get some work as well. But I mean, at 5,800 for a starting running back facing the worst rush defense in the conference, I think you just have to fire him up at that price. Next play, again, another guy that's just so consistent this year is David Bell. Don't have to go into it too deeply. I mean, we know how David Bell's been performing this year. 7,300 feels cheap for a guy that has double-digit targets in all but one game this season, has hit double-digit receptions in the last 3 games. That's beautiful for a site like DraftKings. That's full-point PPR. Both of those players will be in most of my lineups today.
Can't argue with that at all, especially with Chase Brown. I mean, Purdue doesn't. Obviously, both sides of this game with Illinois, Purdue, and Illinois, runs the ball. So good calls, and definitely with McRae at 3,100 on the bargain bin. Rayshon Henry, Virginia, $3,900. He's sub $4,000. We still see Billy Kemp way up there in the $6,000 range, despite the fact he's really been phased out to a large extent over the past few weeks, due to injury or due to just simply game flow. But Rayshon Henry is the starting outside X receiver, the Z receiver on the right side, while complimenting Dontavian Wicks, who's on the left side there. And he did he gets those deep shots. He hits home runs, 3 catches, 76 yards, and a touchdown last game, still under $4,000. I mean, if you're looking for, a pretty good shot on the wide receiver front, that's a nice salary modifier. And they're playing a Virginia Tech team that just got rid of Justin Fuente, their head coach. So again, motivation, where are they? They're kind of in limbo here. So anytime you get a team that's reeling, even though they've been decent defensively, this is a UVA offense that you can pretty much queue up against them. I'm not afraid of that matchup at all. And then Donovan Smith, Texas Tech, $5,200. As mentioned, you might not see Gerry Bohanon play. If so, despite the fact Shippen is all right, I don't think you'll see as efficient an offense from Baylor, which kind of plays into Texas Tech's hands. They'll probably be throwing a little bit. Obviously, Baylor's got a pretty good Dave Aranda-led defense, but he's probably hitting the road somewhere. A lot of rumors that he goes to USC, Riverside native from Redlands out there, and went to school, I believe, at Cal Poly or, something like that. It's one of those DFCS California schools. So he is a native California boy. We could see what happens. Obviously, Baylor's got a little bit on the line here. We want to see, them finish the year out strong. But at $5,200, that is as cheap as you're going to get.
Yeah, he runs the ball. Can't ask for more than that.
That's as cheap as it gets, for a quarterback in this slate. And if, over there at Superflex, you want to go with a big top QB and then kind of take a shot down the board, I think that's a pretty reasonable shot. Michael, your bargain bin on the main.
Yeah, he scored 30 points against Iowa State, fantasy points. He can do that against Baylor, even though I'm hoping, as a proponent of the under there, I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But my 2 bargain bin plays, one, I like Kris Hutson at Oregon. We've got injuries with the Oregon receivers. Johnny Johnson out, Jalen Redd out, Micah Pittman transferred. So you're looking at Devon Williams as the clear-cut wide receiver 1. But then Kris Hutson stepped up last week, 8 targets. He had 96 yards receiving. He's min-priced, right? He's 3,000. You can't really ask for more than that out of a min-priced player as the wide receiver 2 on a pretty good Oregon offense in a game against Oregon State, the big rivalry game. What do they call it? Civil War out there?
The Civil War. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I think it'll be a competitive game. You're going to have to throw the ball because Oregon's running game didn't look very, very dangerous last week. So, again, as a wide receiver 2, you can't really beat that 3,000 pricing. And then Parker Washington, I think we're both obviously high on the Penn State passing game this week against Michigan State. Can't stop a lick through the air. He's seen an uptick in targets with closer to 8 in the last month, where he was right around 6 for the seasonal average. So he's seen an uptick in targets. They really don't have a third option behind Washington and Jahan Dotson in that passing game. So can't really beat that at 4,100.
Yeah, no complaints on either front. And we are pretty heavily vested in Devin Williams on that over 38.5. It actually bumped up to 44.5 this morning too. So it's trending in the right direction there. I still think he clears 44.5, but still something to consider. On to the evening slate. Seth Henigan, Memphis, $8,400. I just simply can't. When you're dealing with Memphis, he's looked great, frankly, in terms of the past few games since he's come back. I'm a Seth Henigan fan. I know Mike might not be as much as I am, given the fact Javon Ivory is questionable. But I think, man, there's not a lot of bankable QBs in this night slate. 8 games. We already have several games that already took place on Friday and Thursday. Not dealing with a lot of talent here, so I'm going with Henigan. I think you have to have a plant your flag type QB in this slate. And then next, again, 8 plays. I'm going with Kyren Williams over a terrible, checked-out Stanford team that has been getting blown out each of the past 3 weeks. I mean, not even close to competitive any of the past 3 weeks. I know that Tanner McKee will be back and playing, but I'm not remotely concerned about that Stanford team. I think they get blown out. It's a 20-point spread. I'm going with Kyren Williams.
Yeah, late in the year, I screwed up the show sheet, so I'll just piggyback on those plays for the night slate. I like Seth Henigan. Tulane's been better against the pass in recent weeks, but, I mean, they faced USF and Tulsa, okay? It's not an accomplishment to stop those passing games. They're allowing over 30 fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks, so I really do like Seth Henigan this week. And then on top of that, Kyren Williams. A question for you. Last week, Stanford, what did Cal average per carry against Stanford last week? Any guess?
I'm going to go with 6.5.
10.3 yards per carry. 10.3 yards per carry. All right. Again, another team. They've been bad. Stanford's been bad against the run the entire year. Again, another team I think just has quit on the year. I know this is a rivalry game. I think they're at home, but Notre Dame needs to win this game. They've got all the motivation because they're in the college football playoff picture. Right.
Last week was a rivalry game too. So they didn't show up for that against Cal. Why would they show up now?
Kyren Williams gets it done, run pass. He just lock him into your lineups.
Sounds good. We'll move on to the bargain bin for the evening slate. The West Virginia has the pleasure of drawing Kansas's defense. I'm going with Jarret Doege. Sub 6,000 QB. It was either him or it was Jalen Daniels. I was going one side of this because Daniels is 5,400. I hit on him last time, and he does like to run. I wouldn't fault anybody for going with Daniels on Kansas, but I mean, West Virginia's got at least a passable defense. All right, you want to go on Kansas, okay? 130th, dead last in explosiveness per play, dead last with a 55% success rate, dead last with 4.24 points per drive, dead last with 7.6 yards per play average. What more do you want here? Okay. I mean, I don't know what more I can say about how bad that defense is, but they're as bad as it gets in the entire country when it comes to defending against anybody. So, I mean, I just think at $5,700, you're pretty much you're priced in to Jarret Doege here, and Neil Brown's offense from Troy. They like to throw the short, quick hit passes, and the receiving core has gotten better with Winston Wright, Bryce Wheaton. I just think you're priced into that. I'm going with Jarret Doege. And then on the other side with Devin Neal, who I didn't mention in the injury news, but he's questionable to play, whether he may not suit up, but you probably want to check out closer to game time whether or not he's suited up. And if not, get Amari Pesek-Hixon into your lineups for Kansas. He is when Neal went out last game, Hixon got 9 carries. There was only one other carry distributed to the running back core. He's definitely the guy. He's definitely the one who's going to get the carries. And Lance Leipold's, fairly run-heavy attack. It's going to be him and Jalen Daniels running the RPO there in Kansas. I just think at $3,100, if you're looking for a deep shot play, and again, a tough slate where there aren't a lot of sexy options, that are on the cheap side for running backs. I think that's about as good as you're going to get on the running back side at $3,100 for a bargain play. Michael.
Yeah, spoke on the porous Stanford rush defense. So I actually don't mind stacking the Notre Dame running backs in this late slate. If you think Notre Dame's going to blow out Stanford,
which I do,
if you do, then Logan Diggs is going to get run. He's got double-digit fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 games. I think we probably are both high on him in
sure.
College fantasy dynasty leagues for years to come now, probably taking over that running back 1 next year when Kyren Williams likely heads off to the NFL. So again, he's getting run of late. So if Notre Dame is ahead by a couple scores, Diggs is going to get some extended looks. Another freshman I like is Caden Prather for West Virginia. He's, again, this is time of year where these teams start to get a look at their talented freshmen. He's a 4-star recruit. Last 2 games, he's seen an uptick in playing time. I think he's got around 12 targets, 4 receptions in both games. Kansas, as you alluded to, can't stop the run or the pass. West Virginia likes to pass at 30 attempts per game. So, again, cheap bargain play, Prather is definitely in the mix for me.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't target that wide receiver core, especially, last name, 9.5 yards per pass allowed by Kansas, 125th in the country, which is an improvement over 130th for every other metric there is. Moving on to the prize picks section of today. If you want to get in on the action, which you should, you could put in the promo code BETSPERTS and get your initial investment matched up to $100 on prize picks, which is what we like to see. And prize picks, I get some pretty good value this week, as they always do. They seem to always shade towards the unders. I like Aidan O'Connell for Purdue. Mike and I talked about it last night. 247 pass yards against Illinois. I'm not afraid of their pass defense by any metric. Obviously, they do a good job of controlling the clock and running the ball. But listen, Purdue's there to throw. And Aidan O'Connell has smashed 247 for pretty much each of the past 6 weeks. I think he had 1 under. But, 5 of the 6, I'm a straight go on that. And then as the aforementioned Sean Clifford, 209.5 passing yards against Michigan State's pass defense. That is a linchpin, okay, of both my lineups that I have out there in prize picks this week. I know last week I put him out there. I think he was 216.5, but he was sick against Rutgers. I just cannot possibly envision a scenario, okay, coming off illness, practicing all week where he doesn't hit 210 passing yards unless he gets injured. That's it, because this is Mike Yurcich's offense. They throw, they don't run the ball. Straight go for those 2 plays. Michael, your 2.
Yeah, I'm surprised this one is still on the board, because you're telling me that a running back who has topped 100 yards in the last 7 games, has scored at least 1 touchdown in 6 of the last 7, can't get 1 rushing touchdown. Braylon Allen, half a touchdown. I am hammering that one. He's going Minnesota, tough run defense, right? They're top 3 in the Big Ten, I believe, against the run. But you can't tell me that Braylon Allen's not bulldozing in for 1 score this week. So love that play. TreVeyon Henderson, I jumped on this one early in the week. I think it was 13.5 fantasy points to begin the week. It's now up to 14.5, but I still like that play. If Ohio State, I know we talk about the quarterback, we talk about the receivers for Ohio State, but Michigan's strength this year has been defending the pass, right? They get after you with those pass rushers. Got a pretty good secondary. Daxton Hill, 5-star sophomore safety. I think, TreVeyon Henderson's had a little bit of a lull here these last few games, but I think this is an opportunity for him to bust out a little bit. The Michigan linebackers are not great in coverage, and while the defensive ends really can get after the pass rusher, they struggle a little bit, specifically Ojabo in his run fits. So either way, run pass, Henderson, is as good as there is in the country. I think he can hit that over pretty easily today.
Yeah, and speaking of Henderson, when he hasn't put up as big games. It's been in games that they've just been blowing people out. And Ryan Day has chosen to keep the first year true freshman out. You saw last week against Michigan State where they got out quick, threw all over him. He only got 9 carries. He went for 7 yards per carry, but he only got 9 carries against Michigan State. Also, another blowout, 54-7 against Indiana, 9 carries. Still went for 81 yards and 2 touchdowns, but they didn't. Oh, excuse me, 3 touchdowns. He caught a passing touchdown, but they didn't have to give him the volume. Rutgers, another 52-13 win, 8 carries. Akron, 59-7, 8 carries. So when they've faced lower level competition, they haven't given them the bulk, but Nebraska 21, Penn State in the most recent, competitive game that they've had, 28 carries, 152 yards. So that's when they really break them out, break a case of glass, and they do. And when he gets 15 to 20 carries, he's gonna crush that. I mean, no offense to you, Mr. Michigan here, but come on. I can't possibly see that not happening.
You alluded to his workload the last 3 weeks. He should be fresh, right? I think they're going to ride him. You don't expect to see much of Master Teague or Mayan Williams today. I think it's going to be all Henderson.
Absolutely. Statement game here for both teams. So that's going to do it for the Letter Winners podcast. The last one in the regular season. Unbelievable. It seems like it's gone by so quickly. Thank you for tuning in, and good luck with all your wagers this week.
Go Blue.